Dr. Liz Conde-Frazier and Reverend Ortiz, we are so excited to have you here lecturing in our summer series, Yale Youth Ministry, a beacon of joy in the midst of suffering. And my first question is just, you're here to talk about poverty. Can you help me understand when you say poverty, what you mean when you say poverty?
Well, there's poverty and then there's deep poverty. And poverty is what people usually talk about when they talk about the poverty line, right? Mm-hmm. And it's how much will it cost to sustain a family of 4 or more. But then you have deep poverty, which means that you're talking about a whole level of persons who are living with food insecurity, unsustainable housing. They're living from job to job, from little bits of jobs to little bits of jobs. They don't have real routines in life because having a regular job gives you a routine, right? And so it means that they're just sort of trying to survive. You can't really say that they're surviving. They're trying so hard to survive, right? So I have students who are homeless, and their place to do their homework might be a bar or something like that, right? So that kind, and it's very difficult to come out of deep poverty, and it is generational. The helps that people think are out there, you know, for the entitled poor, and I'm not sure what they mean by that, don't even begin to touch what is the deep poverty, right? And the place where we minister is Philadelphia, and out of the big cities in the United States, Philadelphia is the city with the largest deep poverty ratio. So that's sort of, you begin to take a look at what does that mean.
And I think to tag along with that, when you mention the level of poverty going so deep as being intergenerational, is this aspect of inherited poverty, where you may be second or third generation living under conditions in which your value system, your coping system is all about just making it through the day, not having the typical resources that an average American or an average individual has, which looks a whole lot different than having the right language, the right degree, the right education, or even the right connections just to make it through the day. When it is inherited in that sense, it's very traumatic, the fact of living under those conditions. So it doesn't take just an experience with abuse here or just an experience with being robbed there. It is part of the lifestyle. And so you make decisions differently, you think differently, and so it becomes entrenched in who you are. And
there's then also an alternative economy, because you have to do, the saying is you got to do what you got to do when you're living that way, right? And so there are alternative economies and different ways of understanding how you do values, because it's contextual, and you can't judge because you're not living that way, right? So it's very different. And then the stress levels of that kind of poverty it does something to your health, which then also does something to your ability to sustain a job. It does something to your ability to be able to go to school. It does something to your ability to think straight, because there's so much going on in your mind. Yeah. It's just difficult to just think logically, not because you're not smart, but it's because the levels of stress don't allow you to do that. And one thing, there's a chemistry to that level of stress where you're working out of a place of anxiety. And when you do that, the chemistry in the brain changes because it shuts down the decision-making part of your brain, and you're working from the fight or flight part of the brain, right? So how do you deal with that? So you tell somebody, so calm down. Well, how do I calm down? I have to think about this and this and this and this and that, and this is going wrong, and I got to fix that. And so it's a whole other existence that people don't always imagine.